10,000 stores offering
Millions of
sales
dollars
in the
in cash sales changing hands starting on
New York. Hit the stores.
The Division story takes us through a whirlwind of events that stems from the outbreak of a lethal virus on a major city, and how the government and general population reacted to this situation. Control over the city is lost, and the area turns into a lawless zone run by the uprising of multiple hostile factions. Sounds like a good movie, right? But what about the civilians on the front line? They're stuck fighting for survival, trying to keep out of sight while scavenging for food and water. No wonder so many of them have picked up whatever weapons they can find and grouped up with people in the same situation, just to be able to feed their families. All support from outside of the city seems to be lost. They're alone, desperate, and doing the best they can given the current situation. Within all of the mayhem, has the world forgotten about them? The fact that this is now spread to the rest of the world, it's likely that this is indeed the case. But there is one voice, a voice for the people, a voice that refuses to be ignored. Rick Valassi.
Welcome back, I'm Rick Valassi, and you lucky bastards are listening to Wouldn't You Know It. And if you're listening, that means you really are a lucky bastard. You apparently won the genetic lottery and can't catch the green poison like 95% of the rest of humanity.
Rick Valassi is a freelance reporter and radio show broadcaster. His radio show can be heard all over the city, on the radios at safe houses and the base of operations. Born and raised in New York City, he uses his personal pirate radio show called Wouldn't You Know It to talk about the current issues, rumours and theories regarding the situation at hand. Valassi's reports cover a range of topics like the green poison, details about the various factions around the city, the Dark Zone and Directive 51. An admitted conspiracy theorist with a paranoid streak, most of his reporting is based on either first-hand observations or the information from his sources. He is genuinely concerned for the city and his fellow New Yorkers, continually urging his listeners to stay safe and keep the faith. Valassi has taken the role of the voice of the city, making it his priority to keep everyone informed of the going-ons around New York City. Throughout the main storyline, Valassi is constantly up to date with everything happening in the city. He's super supportive of the JTF and everything they do, but understands, like any resource at this time, we don't have enough of them. He goes on over a series of broadcasts to talk about Bliss and the Last Man Battalion and their plans to take over the streets of Manhattan, but also to warn people of the inmates escaping from Rikers Island and pouring onto the main streets of New York City. Rick also talks of the cleaners, nut jobs covered head to toe in hazmat gear with homemade flamethrowers. He says that they could be simple city sanitation, but he also suspects that the cleaners are representatives of the DCD scientist. Are they clearing the infection, or are they burning up the evidence? Valassi talks about the Dark Zone, about how nobody knows exactly what's there, and nobody sane would go in to find out. So he goes to check it out with his own eyes. He can be seen interacting with the leader of the JTF. Valassi suspects that the government has sealed off this area to hide something, and that perhaps it's a blast zone of a bioweapon. But there's one thing for sure, the place terrifies him. Over the wall he could see bodies everywhere, on the streets, hanging off the walls, bullet holes, blast shadows, burned out windows and doors. He said it feels haunted. As any conspiracy theorist would react, Valassi doesn't exactly have any favourable views towards the Division and Directive 51.
Now these people are what the directive refers to as the first wave. Why'd they call them the first wave? Because they got a second wave embedded right behind them. That's right, New York. You thought the fun was over, but no. You get a whole new bunch of faceless government overlords to deal with. And the best part is you don't even know who they are. They could be your neighbor, your co-worker, your cousin, your brother-in-law, your fucking grandmother for all I know. Hell, you could be one yourself and not even know it. That's how deep they're buried. Sleep with one eye open, New York.
In one of his final broadcasts for the vanilla game, Valassi goes on to tell us that things aren't much better outside of New York. The world isn't just sitting there waiting for us to make it through the situation. The epidemic is now global. Numbers released on the DCD's website shows that the infection numbers are continuing to rise. Every city in America is under martial law being enforced by state and national guards. There are food shortages, riots, overloaded hospitals, and the power grids are failing.
So what's my point? My point is, you're like me. You've been telling yourself the world you know is waiting for you on the other side of this mess. But here's the thing. What if it's not?
Wiley can be a little intense and can take conspiracy theories to a whole new level. Nothing really seems to be out of place here. He's just a concerned member of the public being open and honest about his feelings towards the current situation. It's obvious that he has someone on the inside, possibly someone in the JTF that's feeding him some inside information. But at this stage, there's nothing that can cause any harm. That is, until a little later in the story. We start hearing some new broadcasts from Valassi, and this is where things start getting a little strange. Valassi's broadcasts were starting to get a little more specific, and the information from his sources were beyond what the JTF had, and even the division in a couple of cases. Also, we're introduced to a new character, Judy Walters. Through a series of echoes, we find out that Valassi has been reaching out to Walters in an attempt to have her be a whistleblower for the pharmaceutical company she works for. She has evidence that they withheld information on their progress towards a cure for the virus. In the final echo of the series, Judy is hit by a cab in the street and killed. We can see Rick Valassi on the side of the street talking to a news editor, saying what he just witnessed and that the story has been lost. He then noticed a USB stick on the street, which is shown in the echo as containing non-disclosed information about the company. He grabs it and tells the person on the phone that this story isn't over, before walking away. On top of this, there is a series of recordings from a Ruth Massey who's been following Valassi in an attempt to expose him, because in her eyes things don't line up, and that this Rick Valassi never existed before the outbreak, that he is likely some sort of smokescreen put in place by the government.
My name is Ruth Massey. I've lived in New York for 32 years, and I have a question for you. Who is Rick Valassi? I mean, we all know who we think he is. He's the loudmouth who keeps talking on the radio about what he thinks is going on. But is he really that? Or is what he's saying intended as a distraction to keep us away from the real truth? I think that's what's really going on here. That Valassi is a mouthpiece for something or someone, and it's his job to spout opinions that hide the truth. And I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna take down Rick Valassi. Just you watch me.
But as we get through the recordings, she abruptly cuts off the search, stating that they were listening, and it could be too late. But it's too big, much bigger than she had imagined. And the closer she was getting to him, the more dangerous it was getting.
This is going to be my last broadcast. They're listening. I mean, I always knew they were listening, but now I know they're listening. And I don't know how much time I have left. I'm giving up on the Valassi story. It's too dangerous. It's too big. Bigger than you think. What he's tied up in, Manhattan is only the tip of the iceberg. If I keep looking into it, they're going to kill me. Maybe they're already going to kill me. I don't know. Maybe this is too late. But I am telling you, whatever you do, stay away from Rick Valassi. Stay away from...
And as far as the story goes, this is the last we hear of Rick Valassi. What happened to him? Where is he now? What did he do with the USB stick that is potentially holding information towards a cure? I believe that Rick Valassi was found by Kina long before relocating to the Westside Pier, and that he's been used by Kina to relay information and throw the division off track. Have you got that person in your life that can't keep a secret to save himself? Have you ever used this person to perhaps relay some information to the wider audience that otherwise wouldn't sound as good coming directly from the source? Kina has been using Valassi as this person. Rick Valassi has two attributes that Kina saw as being easy to manipulate to get him to do what he wanted. Number one, Valassi is a paranoid conspiracy theorist who hates the government and the division. And two, he won't let anything get in the way of informing the public of what exactly is going on. He couldn't just take Valassi as hostage and then force him to do it, because this just doesn't fit with Valassi's character, to just roll over and do what he's told. He'd rather go down as a martyr. All Kina would have to do is feed Valassi exactly the information that he wants to hear, and exactly what Kina wanted to be made public across Manhattan. Feeding into Rick's paranoia against the government, Keener explains that he was once a part of the first wave division agents, and that when things went bad, they abandoned the agents and left them for dead in the dark zone. When things went from bad to worse, they pinned it all on him. Rick Valassi would have bought into this, thinking that Keener is actually one of the good guys trying to save humanity, having left the division behind. In exchange for this information, Valassi is asked to relay the specifics of his whereabouts, and possibly even hand over the USB containing the information about the production of a cure. Now, I'm not too sure about this one, as we haven't heard anything from Valassi. Perhaps Keener killed Valassi after he got what he wanted from him. But what I think is more likely is that Keener didn't inform Valassi of the location on the West Side Pier until well after he'd left the island altogether. In one of his later broadcasts, Valassi mentions Keener being spotted in a very specific location on the West Side Pier. Because of the recent events, the hostile factions band together and go after Keener, and the division follows the factions to find out what's going on. Keener obviously wanted the cell phones and laptop to be found. They were recorded specifically for the division agents to hear, possibly continuing in his attempt to recruit agents to his cause. Later in another broadcast, Valassi gives a spiel about how he'd escape the city if he wanted to. It wouldn't be through force, but through the manipulation of an individual, perhaps a weaker or more desperate individual. This spiel is almost identical to what Keener says to us in one of his last recordings.
The quarantine as it's set up is good. Good at keeping idiots on the island. Oh sure, the Coast Guard's watching the water and the JTF's guarding the bridges and the tunnels, but the thing is this. The weakest component in any system is people. All it takes is one guy who'll take a bribe, one optimist who thinks he's smarter than everyone else, one desperate mother or father who'll do anything for their kid, and the whole system breaks down. And that one little slip, that one tiny crack, that's all I needed.
Then we have Ruth Massey. Admittedly, she sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but she was so dead set on finding and exposing Rick Valassi that it must have been something pretty big to get her to suddenly stop pursuing him. In her words, the trailer was getting too dangerous. Maybe Keener got to her. For me, this theory answers a lot of the questions, like how did Valassi know so much about Aaron Keener? Why did he go from having a somewhat positive outlook on the JTF to just treating them like another branch of the government that couldn't be trusted? How was he getting the information before the JTF and even the division? Though I admit, there's a few pieces missing, but this feels like the most plausible when considering the personality and character traits of these two individuals. What do you think? Do you have any ideas of what happened to Rick Valassi? Love him or loathe him, there is certainly more to the story than what we're seeing on the outside. It feels pretty safe to assume that we'll be seeing more of Aaron Keener in the future, but given the new information that he's come across, do you think we'll be seeing Rick Valassi in the capital, digging deeper into the story of the green poison? Now I can't forget to say thank you to a few of the many amazing people for being able to go the extra mile in supporting the channel, especially Devereaux, you legend you. Thanks again for your continued support. Before I go, don't forget about the Agent Watch giveaway we have going at the moment. I discussed it more in the last video, but I'll add a link to the competition in the description. I'll be announcing a winner next week. Cheers!
The green poison. Where'd it come from? Some yuppie scum millennial helicopter mom refusing to give her kids a goddamn measles shot? I wish. I hate those morons. But this ain't measles. And that ain't the way the world works, and it ain't Ebola or Marburg. It didn't evolve in bat shit some monkey ate before some idiot ate the monkey. No. I tell you where it came from. It came from a lab. This is some designer shit, people. Somebody cooked this up on purpose. And maybe it got out by accident, or maybe they let it out on purpose. But either way, if you don't think the federal government is involved in some fucked up way or other, then A, you don't have my sources, and B, you've been comatose for the last 60 years. Because God knows there ain't no advantage for people who love power in a situation like this, right? Nah, never happen. Wake up, New York. Open your eyes. Think.